And good morning, everyone, and namaste. Welcome to Hindu Lounge. As you know, Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective, an initiative of World Hindu Council of America. Hindu Lounge comes live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific, and in Hindu Lounge we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues. We take you get our unique take on what is going on in America, and we talk about it from an American Hindu perspective, right? So it's very different from a lot of other shows that you may be accustomed to seeing. And as always, with me is Utsada. Utsada is Utsav Chakrabarti. Utsada, welcome to Hindu Lounge. Utsada is the executive director of Hindu Pact, and many times with Utsada is Maya
Maya
Durga.
Durga
So namaste,
Chakravarti.
Maya Durga. Maya Durga has been our avid watcher since the first day of the show, and she enjoys the show so much that no matter who comes or who doesn't come to watch the show, Maya Durga is always there. Utsada is, as I said, executive director of Hindu Pact, and I'm Ajay Shah. I am the president of World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA. And Utsada, we have a very interesting topic today. So before that, I just want to give you an opportunity. You are not at home; you're traveling, and you're doing some community outreach and community organizing work right now, right?
Yeah, I'm I'm modeling myself after President Barack Obama, and that's where he used to travel around and do community outreach. So I started doing that as well. No, that's where
And
the comparison ends.
and
I just
Maya
had to
Durga
bring
is
in President Obama somehow.
and Maya Durga is like right, in the she's at getting trained in community organizing at a very early age.
Yes, Maya Durga has been a sport. We have been traveling for the last 2 days, and she's a great sport. She's 2.5 years old, and she's traveling with us, and
Does she like
hasn't been
community
saying at all.
organizing? Does she like community organizing? That's the
She
question.
hasn't complained. She hasn't complained. She
Uh,
spends a lot of time in the car, and still she hasn't complained. She's been very friendly and very accommodating.
Hey,
So
that's she's a budding political organizer and maybe a future president for all you know, because that's
maybe a future
community
president for
organizing
all
is
I
a
know.
legitimate path to presidency. Hey, so that I am going to, we all read WhatsApp group once in a while. I barely get chance to read WhatsApp group, but day before yesterday, I was looking at a WhatsApp group and I came across one of the a posting by Ashok Chogle. Ashok ji is vice president of president of vice president of VHP in India, and he has written this article in first post. It is called "Yes, Hindus are idol worshippers, but what's wrong with that?" And then there's a subheading to that: the projection that worship of idol by Hindus is wrong has been going on for more than a couple of centuries. So there was a little bit of debate on this issue and all that, and so you know, I thought that this is a subject that is kind of worth discussing more. And the reason I say that is because there are certain beliefs that Hindus hold, and we have this, especially Hindus who live in in West, not just Hindus who live in the West, but even people Hindus who live in the East, in India and other countries, have this urge to justify what they're doing. And the question is, should Hindus be apologizing all the time for their actions? Should they be apologizing for what they do to the rest of the world? I mean, explain is one thing, because curious people may ask that, hey, why are you doing certain practices? And we go out and we explain to people, we say what we do, why do we do it, and things like why we have certain religious practices. But do we always have to justify these practices, and do we have to always apologize for these practices? And so that got me thinking, that what are some of the other things that we apologize for, Hindus apologize for generally, and why should we? And then I would go out and say, Utsada, that Hindus are done apologizing. We have nothing to apologize for. We have reasons why we do it, and even if we don't have reasons to do certain things, these are our widely held beliefs that we are going to we are going to stick by. So that is what our show is today, and we are going to start talking about various practices. I'm going to read some excerpts from Ashokji's paper article and have you comment on it. But before that, any without going into any specific practices, any general thoughts on Hindus or Hindu apologetic, as the field would be called in academics? Any comments on Hindus apologizing for their practices?
So, Ajay, the thing is that you have to understand that Hindus come from a history of about, depending on which part of the world the Hindus were living in, but they have had at least 500 to 800 years of colonialism and behind them. And during these periods, these colonial rulers were extremely harsh, extremely hostile ideologically and theologically, and it led to a lot of distortions, psychological as well as social, within the Hindu community's psyche. And what you see here, where Hindu communities always stay very apologetic about their own history and their own dharma and their practices. Uh, that is, it is a direct outcome of those 500 to 800, 900 years of colonial subjugation and attacks. And some of these have become institutionalized. Like there are Hindu religious and theological institutions who have been defending uh, against colonial narratives for so long that they almost have these as part of their social narratives, that they have to explain things. They have to explain things like, as you explained, quote unquote idol worship. Or I don't use the word idol because that itself is very anti-Hindu. I use the word deity because we consecrate a physical form. uh, then there is the whole swastika issue, obviously, that is all the rage all over the world right now because of the renewed interest in swastika, and its direct contrast to Hitler's Hakenkreuz, which is a huge movement now. We have been working on it. Other Hindu groups have been working on it. But at the core of it lies a fundamental difference between uh, dharmic systems and Abrahamic systems. And this fundamental difference, at the theological level, at the soteriological level, at the psychological level, at the cosmological level, even how Hindus and Hindu religion looks at the universe is very different from how many Abrahamic systems look at the universe. So that is where the difference comes. And in fact, the fact that we are using English to discuss this itself is an outcome of some of these colonial constructs. So core at the core lies the discussion on monotheism versus polytheism versus henotheism versus monism versus polymorphism. So Hindus have been struggling with explaining many of these things as what Hindu dharma is. And in my opinion, it is all of these. So my thought
It's
is to
interesting,
stop
right?
there.
Because interesting. Let's start with that, because that's where Ashokji actually starts his article, and he talks about. He says that before I proceed further, I may want. There are many who will say that the word idol is not correct meaning of the object which is worshipped by Hindus. The correct term that the Hindu use in their language, namely murti, is namely murti. And then he goes on to say that while there is merit here. Um, you know I will use the word idol to explain the essential message that I wish to convey, since the opponents will say that Hindus are murti worshippers, and the calumny will continue. If in the explanation below one does not find and replace for idol with murti, the message does not change. So what he's trying to say is that, to some extent, using the word idol itself is, at least the way I interpret it, is a bit apologetic. That, oh, no, 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 we're not idol worshipper. But I want to go back and say, the fact that we are shying away, whether first of all, Murthy, as he has said, Ashok Chogle has said, Rajiv Malhotra has said, other people have said, and we in VHP we have made this case for last 50 years, that yes, we have there are certain words that cannot be translated. Murti, deity, Murti is one of them. And for and to kind of say that to kind of say that we are not, oh no, no, we are not idol worshipper, is actually playing in the hands of people who were out to destroy and break every idol they could find. So yes, or to break every murti they would find. So I understand why Hindus want to kind of move away from that word, because by saying that, oh, we are not idol worshipper, we are kind of saying that, look, I mean, what we are worshiping is not an idol, so don't break the idol. To me, that itself is apologetic.
So, as I said, Ajay bhai, it's not just apologetic. It shows the colonial fears. So, the first things, there are terms that our colonial rulers uh, invented as glorification of their titles. When when a Hindu ruler historically would be, will be conquering lands or whatever they would be doing, winning, they would be called Chakravartin. There will be titles like Maharaja or Adhiraj. These will be titles of success for any ruler. The people who colonized us and who subjugated us and converted us and killed us, they would use titles like Ghazi, like Butchikan. So these titles have a long and deep meaning in them. So when somebody uses the title of Butchikan, they would actually means Buddh means, the word Buddh comes from a statue of Buddha. So Buddh is a statue, and Shikan means defeater of a statue. So, this whole idea of destroying statues or murtis or idols, in initially whether it is Buddhist, Hindu, or Jain, because these were all part of the dharmic systems. That is in core of many of these people as titles, and they take pride in that. So, what you are describing, as we have, don't say we are idol worshippers, is comes from that fear, that
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, there was
1,000-year
a
old fear.
there's a history of invasion of India, and that's the part I find a little bit interesting, because Ashokji then says the projection that the worship of idols by Hindus is wrong has been going for more than a couple of centuries. Right in the first such encounter, the Hindu saint said, "We worship the eternal being, though through the idol, which helps us focus our attention." And ever since, the same explanation has been given every time whenever the issue is raised. There has been no statement as to why this is wrong. It is just that the Christian and Muslims say we say it is wrong, and therefore it is wrong. So I I want to be very explicit, right? I think and further down, before I go there, I mean, further down, Ashokji just does say that the history of vandalism of temples show how deeply attached the Hindus are to the idol, and he goes talk about the Goan Inquisition, all that. But let's go back. I mean, the explicit message that the Islam brought to India was that we want to destroy the idols and we want to convert the idol worshippers. Right?
Not
This was
just to India, not just to India. You have to understand what
yeah.
you call as
I'm
India
talking
today.
only about the Indian context, but yeah, yeah. Please
Yeah,
go ahead. Yeah,
it is a core message of what
yeah,
Islam constitutes. That is exactly what they did with this, with Egypt. They did with Byzantine. If you go to Turkey today, in modern time, you just saw in the last 2 years how the Hagia Sophia, which was a Christian church,
yeah,
uh, which was previously a dharmic temple of the Greco-Roman origin, Byzantine origin, was converted to a mosque. So
yep.
this whole obsession with so-called anti-iconoclasm, as the Britishers
As
used
they
to
would
call it
call
in
it.
a more
Yeah,
polite way. It is not just limited to Indian subcontinent, but because it is core to dharmic philosophies across the world, it is practiced in a very aggressive manner by the quote-unquote iconoclast religions.
right.
Uh, and that's hence that glorification of their title called Butchika.
And that is what drives other people to people who are Hindus, who have suffered through these invasions, and a lot of times have been defeated in this invasion, for lack of better word. They have shied away from idol worship. Now I can understand that when you're when you're being invaded and you're facing the foreign enemy, an army, and you find a justification to say that, look, I mean, but we are really not worshiping idols, and things like that. But if you why does why do Hindus continue that now? That is really the question. And I think one of the reasons, Sada, and I want to put it out there with no real offense to anyone, but there are Hindu traditions that have evolved. Hindus always had this concept of you know perceiving God in different ways, right? And if you go to the early Vedic days, God was perceived in a certain way. In the Puranic days, the representation was different. In the ensuing years, the God was perceived in a different way. All of these traditions coexisted. Now, I think the way I look at it is, when a lot of these invasions happened, people tried to find, Hindus being accommodative, tried to find common ground with the invaders, and the part they projected more was the part where the god is formless.
That no, I think the formlessness of divinity has been core to Hindu philosophy as well.
Of course.
While formlessness, while formed divinity, or in early Sanskrit, which is now Hindi term, is nirguna and saguna,
Correct.
has been core to Hindu philosophy from the beginning of our recorded
From Vedic
history.
days, right? From
Yeah,
the Vedic days.
because I'll tell you the reason. If you study the earliest Hindu philosophical schools, see, Hindu philosophy is a very good indicator of how society thought and lived. Because Hindu, unlike the Greco-Roman religions, philosophy, Aristotelian philosophy was disconnected with the Greek religion. See, that was their weakness. That's why they were easily converted by the early Christians. Unlike that, Hindu philosophy and Hindu dharma, or quote unquote religion, Hindu theology, were intertwined. So, very good measure of Hindu theological evolution can be gathered from the Hindu philosophical evolution. So, if you study the earliest Hindu philosophical schools that survive, that we know of today, essentially Sankhya, and Nyaya and Vaisheshika, which were parallels of heterodox atheistic Hindu philosophies like the Jaina philosophies and the Bauddha philosophies. So, especially Jaina philosophy, because as funny as it sounds in modern days world, Jaina philosophies were far more dominant in society during the Vedic and the Upanishadic times, and Bauddha philosophies didn't actually exist in maturity, until Buddha came. So, it is really interesting that if you study all of these philosophical schools in their earliest form, especially Nyaya, Vaisheshika, and Sankhya, you will see that the divinity itself has plays a very little role. So murtis, or deities, or idols, had very little role. At the same time, you also see Mimamsa philosophies that have tremendous amount of role of physical deities. So what I am saying here is that, we actually as a religion encompass this entire diversity of, from nirguna to sagun, and everything in between, again from completely atheistic to theistic and everything in between. So it was actually, come to think about it, it was not our physical strength numbers that were so powerful. It is our theological strength and philosophical strength over the years that makes Hindu religion the third, largest religion, because it is actually a complete system in itself through its diverse presentations.
Right. And to there is a concept of, even the even with the deity. And again, we are not going to be apologetic about it. And Ashok ji actually points out in his article that the murtis we consider murti, in the continuing from where you said that in Vedic days there were multiple philosophies, and this concept of this saguna and nirguna brahman, uh, and manifestation of God. And then it continues further, and we when during the Puranic times, especially when the deities were much more established, even at that time, when you even today you can find uh, you know uh, you know concept of worship of murti, where murtis actually take the form. There's a concept called pran pratishtha, and Ashokji talks about it in his article. The pran pratishtha is one where you take the murti, which is just molded, and then you put it in the mandir and you do certain pujas. And after, when you do that puja, the murtis have are thought to have acquired the prana, the life form, and that is when the Bhagwan has manifested in the murti. And because of this concept that Bhagwan lives in each of these murtis, manifested in each of these murtis, and Ashokji makes this point as well, that in every time the invaders came, sometimes they just broke up the murti by chopping the finger of the murti, or beheading it, or whatever, so that now the prana is taken away. And again, to Ashokji's point, Hindus were also, they have done a pran pratishtha, so now this is a living representation of Bhagwan. Hindus were trying to protect the murtis by burying it in the ground or putting it in a well and covering it water, whatever it took to protect the murti.
I just
Now
want
to
to say
say,
something, Ajay.
no, just to finish off, to say that this we are not idol worshipper, we are murti worshipper, all that is true, but we don't have to be apologetic about it. We, our ancestors, have given their life protecting that representation. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So I just want to say, at the point when you said that Hindus had tried to protect their murtis with their deities, uh, because we genuinely do the prana pratishtha and so on. It went to the extreme where during the siege of, of Sri Rangam, uh, by Malik Kafur, Alauddin Khilji's general. They actually, a temple priest actually sacrificed his life, cut open his stomach to hide the deity in his stomach, and take the body out with the deity as part of a funeral procession, to break the siege of Alauddin Khilji's of the Srirangam temple. And it looked like they were taking just a priest's body out through the sieging army, uh, which they allowed, and took the temple inside the body of the dead priest who sacrificed his life. That is what our ancestors actually went through to protect our deities.
Uh,
And I just wanted to make this point here, to understand for people to understand. This is, what our ancestors had gone through in during the colonial period.
yeah. And so I think we have to be very careful, in and we have to be thoughtful, when certain terms you know are maligned and certain terms are attached to it. And if someone calls us idol worshipper, nothing wrong with that. If we want to be idol worshipper, we'll be idol worshipper. If we want to be worshipper of nature, we'll be worshippers of nature. If we want to worship a tree, we'll worship a tree, and we want to worship a cow, we'll worship a cow. And there's deep reasoning behind all of that, and we will talk about it in a minute. But what I want to say, so then I'll say it again during the course of the show, is that it doesn't really matter. It's really, if what Hindus believe as sacred, there are a lot of sacred beliefs in other faiths. Hindus don't go around telling them why do you do certain practice, and we're not going to mention them in this show. But we don't go around questioning other people's beliefs and faiths. That is how we respect other people. We don't question it if they are, if they are native beliefs in a in a deep Amazonian forest, or we don't believe, we don't question beliefs of people who have originated from Middle East. We just say that, look, I mean, as long as your belief is not detrimental to us practicing our beliefs, and is not killing someone, and it's not subjugating someone, it's not enslaving someone, we don't really, do practice your faith any way you want. But you know we at the same time don't accord you the right to question our sacred beliefs either. I want to, so that go to the next one I just kind of mentioned, right? The other belief that we are not going to, we're not going to anyone let anyone question, or we're not going to apologize for. And I see a lot of Hindu apologize for the fact that that we have various forms of God. And we have so are Hindus monotheistic, are they polytheistic, or are they henotheistic, are they monoistic, what are they? Or they follow monoism, what is that? And so Hindus kind of sometimes, especially I've seen in West, bend themselves into pretzel trying to explain what their belief is. I want to make a statement so that people in many, in a song like Vande Mataram, it originally said that 33 crore, which is 330 million gods. That's the, and people say, oh, no, 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 but that is, we are not actually trying to say we have 33 crore god. For a minute, assume we have 330 million gods. So what? Is that harming anyone? If I believe in having a billion gods, so what? Right? Why would that be a matter of ridicule? Why would that be a matter of question for anyone? It is my belief. I stick to my belief. Why apologize? Now, there is a deeper reason to that, because Hindus philosophically see God in every living being, right? Aham Brahmasmi. I see divinity in you. We say namaste. I bow to the divinity within you. So when Hindus say, that is a way, the 330 million God is a way of saying that I see divinity in all human beings, in every living being. That is a metamorphic reason. But why be apologetic about that and say, oh, no, no, but really, really, we have only one God? Why? We have our beliefs. Some believe that divinity resides in every living being. Some believe that in dualism, and some believe in polytheism, some believe in monoism. Right? What do you say?
I absolutely agree. And what I say is, we believe in all of these and more. And if you want to understand, if you find one of these interesting and more convincing than the other, then explore it. I can assure you, they will, every individual will find it far more connecting and deeper than anything else they have explored in their lives. Uh, I will tell you, when I studied our darshanas, uh, the amount of work that our scholars and our acharyas and our seers had done on each one of these philosophical schools. And when I say this, I also include Jaina and Bodha darshanas, because that's the complete 12 schools that I looked at. Each one on its own is really, really convincing. So I remember, I used when I studied Sankhya Yoga, I would be like, wow, there cannot be any more complete system than this. And then you studied Nyaya Vaisheshika, which is debating with Sankhya Yoga, and then you feel like, oh wow, now Nyaya Vaisheshika sounds as convincing, because you know this was evolution of knowledge uh, through discourse, much like modern day scientific discourse works, but with philosophy infused into it. So that is, those were, I would believe, those were the golden age of human evolution, much unlike what happened in from the second third century to the industrial revolution, when humanity expanded on the basis of physical power and competing hatred.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit more about the you mentioned that you want to talk a little bit more about monism. Why is that important?
Well, I didn't say I wanted to talk about monism, but the reason I think monism is important is because it it is something that blends things together. Okay, and it is in present day at the core of how quote unquote Western spirituality, which is a very shallow term. That's a term that people in the West use. So it kind of blend everything together to create this you know, non-aggressive form of dharmic tradition, which actually comes from Hindu dharma. uh, that quote unquote spirituality. So monism is actually at the core of that, and monism is also something that the Vedantic schools have some of the Vedantic schools have given a lot of stress on, and it brings it brings things together. That's why monism is very popular in the West, but I do not believe that monism is the only thing that Hindu dharma brings together. It's one
So
of the.
I want, yeah, no, no, please finish.
No, no,
Now,
please go ahead.
no, no, I was just going to ask you that I have seen very pro-Hindu publications
Hmm,
uh, over the last few years vehemently say that we are not polytheistic, and
correct.
but that is not a new phenomenon. I mean, as we said that through the history, Hindus have had these healthy debates, but I've also seen very look. I mean, Arya Samaj uh, is very staunchly non-murti puja monotheistic kind of tradition. Sikh Dharma is also a monotheistic kind of tradition, and so are a lot of.
Actually, both Arya Samaj and Sikh Dharma, Sikh Panth are not monotheistic. If you read the Guru Granth Sahibs, they have multiple Hindu deities and avatars discussed at length. Bhagwan Ram, Bhagwan Shri Krishna, uh, at
They
length.
mention
So
them, of course.
yeah, yeah,
Sri
but
Ram appears 10,000 times in Guru Granth Sahib.
right, right. But it is almost like all of these, and it is very Vedantic. Sikh traditions are actually very Vedantic, and if you want to specifically say what the Vedantic tradition they are, I would analyze it and say as uh, Vishishta Advaita is what Sikh panths are at a philosophical, at a darshanik level. Now, if you talk to a Sikh in America, they might not be able to discuss this with you in detail because they have probably in their everyday lives don't study it in this way, just like Hindus don't study it in this way. So it's not any one community's fault. At this, Hindus are equally ignorant about these traditions and their classifications, but I guess that's okay. That's why we are doing the show, and we talk about it.
Yeah. So that the other thing that Hindus always seem to apologize for is quote unquote cow worship. Why do we
Yes.
have to? I mean, look, I mean, this is I mean, I don't see a, I have, every time people have asked me about cow, oh, you don't eat beef. And I said, well, I don't see you eat dog meat either or cat meat in America, although it's perfectly acceptable in a lot of countries in Asia or other parts of the world. So, just
Or
as
horse
some,
meat, or
or
horse
horse
meat.
meat. Horse
Yeah.
meat. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of illegal horse trade that goes on from US to Mexico, or and in France and Mexico. I mean, it's a, people eat horse meat. US people don't. So why do people have to apologize? Oh no, no, it's not quite like it's cow. We worship cow, or no, we don't. We respect cow. The historic reasons for worshipping cow, there's a long association with Kamadhenu, or a sacred cow, which grants all your wishes and is associated with Bhagwan Krishna, and it even goes beyond that. And that is in that sacred tradition of ours, we do not eat beef, and we think that cow, as being a center of a village life that sustained Hindu dharma for thousands of years, it is not something that you know we do not kill something we respect and we revere, and we don't make it an object of ridicule. Why do Hindus in America and elsewhere, and not just in India also nowadays, why do people have this urge to apologize for worshipping cows and apologizing for not eating beef? when you know that a lot of when all of us know that many of our ancestors actually had their neck uh, cut, got themselves beheaded because they refused to eat beef. So why
I
that?
think that stems from the same issue, Ajay, that we discussed before. It stems from a defensive approach arising from colonialism, and it stems from the fact that we as Hindus as a community are constantly trying to fit in. We are trying to blend into the sociological norms of every society that we are trying to live in, and it comes from the way we grew up. Our ancestors grew up during the colonial period. So those of our ancestors who were in under the Portuguese Catholic colonial yoke, they would be trying to fit into that, you know, Catholic Inquisition era thought process. Those of our ancestors who were under Islamist colonial yoke, they would try to fit under the Islamic narratives and try to justify things in that space. So we have that issue, and we'll have that at least for another 2 3 generations until we lose the memories, the societal memories of those traditions. And it is slowly going away. Another thing is that we actually did absorb some of those traditions as well. uh, you know in terms of, like, how women dress and look in certain parts of the Indian subcontinent. They absorbed these Islamic norms, and they brought it into their social norms as well, to our detriment. So
Yeah.
these things, it's a very complex thing. You almost need like a artificial intelligence machine language analysis of this. I'm pretty sure somebody will come up with that at some point of time soon.
and,
And
and yeah, and finally, so that I know that we have to close this, but why do Hindus apologize for belief in reincarnation? I mean, yeah, look, on an individual basis, you may believe in reincarnation, you may not believe in reincarnation, and at the theological level, Hindus believe in
no, no, no. So
reincarnation.
that this part I want to be, so I want to say very clearly, but you finish.
No, my question is, if it is your deeply held personal belief based on the Hindu dharma, the way you interpret it, why apologize for it? I mean, look, I mean, some of us may believe in a reincarnation, some of us may not. Hindu dharma, it is a core belief in Hindu dharma, which is fine, and nobody forces anyone to believe in core beliefs of Hindu dharma. I mean, that's the beauty of Hindu dharma.
Most
But
Hindus don't know the core beliefs of Hindu dharma
but why
because it is
apologize?
so vast and
But
diverse.
my question today, Utsada, my question is simply whether you believe in reincarnation or you don't. Why apologize for it? It's like, oh no, 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 it's not quite like that. Well, let me explain. Look, I mean, why apologize for it?
So I think most Hindus don't know much about reincarnation. Interestingly, most Americans, actually, majority of the Americans actually believe in reincarnation, even though it's a
Yes.
completely Hindu and dharmic theological, not theological, soteriological construct, to be more precise. It is in direct contrast to the Abrahamic soteriological construct. Uh, Actually, it goes down to the level of detail of why people cremate versus why people, bury their dead. Because, they want to preserve the physical body for afterlife, after Judgment Day. So that's how core this difference lies. Abrahamics versus dharmic. And Hindus actually don't understand much of this, number one. And secondly, they also are, they can't explain it. Most Hindus cannot explain reincarnation. Whereas if you it takes very little to understand reincarnation, actually. If you understand the different yogas, wink wink, another conversation on yogas, the karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, you will understand what reincarnation is. And it's very easy. And it also connects with a very fundamental difference that we have, which is the nature and the relationship that we have with the Abrahamic systems, which is the nature and the relationship of the divinity, absolute divinity, or Brahman or Paramatman, with the soul. So all of these things are very well interconnected. They are very well discussed in Vedantic schools. Not as much discussed, actually discussed by comparison to other communities, but not as much details in pre-Vedantic schools like Jnana, Sankhya Yoga and Nyaya Visheshika and all these schools. But it is something very deep, and it evolved over a period of time. It evolved over competition and debates between the Hindu Orthodox schools versus the Hindu heterodox schools like Jaina and Buddha traditions. It's very beautiful. It's something it should be, I think this should be uh, taught in Western, in universities, in a very honest way. And unfortunately, it's not. But that will make the entire world a much better place.
Yeah. Hey, so that
Anyway, I have to really go.
yeah, so let's quickly talk about. We have about 13 minutes left, so I would like to pivot to the next topic that we have. And this was a really great discussion. I appreciate the discussion here. Let's talk about a semi good news of the week, or actually maybe the good news of the week. And one of the I don't know if you can see my screen that I'm sharing. Can you see my screen? Not yet. Okay. I was
No, I do see
one of
your
the
screen. I do.
one of the congressmen who has been vehemently anti-Hindu lost his primary election. Tell us about who that politician is and where and what election he lost.
So we have Congressman Andy Levin, uh, who represented Michigan. Uh, During the redistricting of many of these constituencies in Michigan, it so happened that Andy Levin fell in direct competition with another congressman, same party, congresswoman from Michigan. Her name is Haley Stevens. So Haley Stevens and Andy Levin, both representing the Democratic Party, ended up fighting each other in the primaries because of redistricting in Michigan. And thankfully, thanks to the efforts of the Hindu American community in Michigan, thanks to the efforts of a larger, diverse community of thoughtful people in Michigan from the Democratic Party, including a big section of the Jewish community, uh, they campaigned very hard to defeat Andy Levin. Even though he's from the Jewish community. Haley Stevens won with 59.5% of the votes, whereas Andy Levin got 40% of the vote, 40.5%. So
So why
almost a
is it
difference
so?
of 20,000 votes.
Summarize for us why Andy Levine was what did he do?
Andy Levin is one of the few people that Hindu Pact has, using our social media accounts, opposed publicly. We have it takes a lot to really make us
But
unhappy.
not we did not make a recommendation who to vote, who to not to vote because we have
We don't, because
501(c)(3).
we are a
But we
5163.
we
But
basically
we
put our
criticize his
backs on him.
policies, we criticize his positions.
We
Uh,
criticize his positions. Yeah.
yes, he took a very clear position against Hindus on multiple issues. He has been publicly campaigning against Indian position in Jammu and Kashmir, which is also an anti-Hindu position, because in Jammu and Kashmir, as Hindus have been facing uh, well-designed pogrom for the last 70 years in the recent history, especially in the last 35, 40 years. And Andy Levin was a strong supporter of the Islamist groups that were targeting Hindus. Uh, he actually spoke at an event, at a briefing, congressional briefing, where there were convicted people like Angana Chatterjee, who were actually receiving money from the Pakistani government. So that they were people who were known to be a foreign donation receivers from Pakistan. There were people who were known to be supporters of Islamist organizations like Hizbul Mujahideen. And so all of these was very much part of Andy Levin's targeting of Hindu Americans
And
and India.
he was also a co-sponsor of Ilan Omar's bill.
He
Um,
was also, I mean, he was one of the earliest co-sponsors. He has multiple times spoken on behalf of Indian American Muslim Council, which is a front end of Muslim Brotherhood linked organization, Jamaat Islami. So all of these things were very much. The saddest part was, at one point he even blamed Indian Hindutva organization for the targeted violence against Hindus in Bangladesh. I mean, that's the lowest you can get, but that's what Andy Levin was. And guess who else supported Andy Levin? Peter Frederick. We have discussed Peter Frederick at length in our shows. Peter Frederick supported Andy Levin, and that's when I realized Andy Levin is going to lose, because Peter Frederick of late has a very good record of ensuring the defeat of any primary candidate he supports.
And
So
then and Peter and Andy Levin also showed up at the Indian American Muslim Council's events as well, right? Which are very
yeah,
anti-Hindu.
that's correct. That's correct. So he's also regularly, Middle East Forum has published information about how he receives money from Muslim Brotherhood linked individuals in from Syria. So all of those things have been have
And
been going on for a while. So I'm
so
happy. And
let me pivot quickly to the Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week in the remaining 3 minutes
okay,
that we have. Um, uh, and here we go.
मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं लोकहितम्.
And once again, Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week. This week is Support a Child. Support a Child is a VHPA initiative which promotes, the supporting children in India. Every single day, we support close to 4,000 kids, 3,900 kids to be precise, in India, and take care of their food, education, staying, in many cases, not all cases, but education and their clothing and food and all of that. This year, the goal of Support a Child project is to support 4,500 kids. 4,500 kids, they will be supporting every single day. And we urge you to go to Support a Child USA, support a child USA, SUPPORTACHILD USA.org, supportachild.org, USA.org, and make a contribution for $250 a year. You'll be able to support one child for 200, just $250. I mean, that is a, you know insignificant amount in terms of what people make in America, but it changes. It literally changes the life of a child, and you get pictures, you get report card on how the child is doing, and you can see the direct impact this you are making in the life of a child. That is only for like it is $20, about $20 a month. That's pennies a day. That's not even a dollar a day. For less than dollar a day, a child's life can be transformed. So please go to supportachildusa.org and support a child. You go to their website, and you'll find, they have a kanak, which is uh, you know a, a folk dance group, uh, performing all over the country. You can buy tickets, you can go to one of their programs, and and also support a child by just going to one of the programs. So please support a child. And then finally, I do have good news, Hindu good news of the week, which I am a bit hesitant to say how much of good news it is, but here we go. So Hindu good news of the week is this temple. A temple got inaugurated, in finally re-inaugurated, got revitalized. It's a Valmiki Mandir in Lahore. Now, if you remember, Lahore was a close to maybe a 40% Hindu city during the independence, maybe even a 50% Hindu city. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but a substantial number of Hindus lived in Lahore in 1947. Hindus were massacred in Lahore. Hindus had to leave the city of Lahore and migrate to India in 1947 after the independence and the partition, during the partition of the country. A lot of Hindus stayed behind, and one way or the other, the temples were taken over as refugee properties. They were Some of them were destroyed, many of them were destroyed, taken over, made into shopping malls or whatever. This mandir was a 1200-year-old mandir that was actually taken over, uh, surprisingly, by a Christian couple. And because it went through a lot of court proceedings and all of that, and finally the mandir was returned to Hindus. It's a 1200-year-old Hindu mandir, and a 1200-year-old Hindu mandir was finally returned to Hindus. And so now the entire city of Lahore, which is probably the second largest city in Pakistan after Karachi, has two Hindu mandirs. You can celebrate that, you can call it good news. To some extent, it is. The question is, what about all the other Hindu mandirs? So, with that, we are going to just show you some highlights of some of the activities that we have done. As we pivot to the next part of our show, I want to play this little video of all the activities that we have done as part of American Hindus Against Defamation. Here we go. That was a wrong video. I'm going to apologize to that and bring up the right video for showing the AHAD activities. American Hindus Against Defamation, AHAD, is a VHPA initiative. AHAD has constantly stood, and it's very appropriate considering today's show, for misrepresentation of Hindu murtis, Hindu culture, Hindu icons, and Hindu ways of worshipping, Hindu ways of living. One of the projects that AHAD is co-sponsoring along with Dharma Civilization Foundation is a project on Hindu phobia. It is called Hindu Dvesha. Please check out the websites ahadinfo.org to look at the activities that AHAD has done, and check out the website hindudvesha.org and look at the research that Hindu Dvesha initiative of AHAD is doing. So, with that, we come to a close of today's program. Utsada had to leave early. He has community organizing to do. So, on behalf of Utsada and on behalf of Hindu Lounge, I want to thank you for joining us. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. Hindu Lounge comes live every week on Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, where we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues. Hindu Pact is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America. Utsada is Utsav Chakrabarti. He is the executive director of Hindu Pact, and I am Ajay Shah. I am the president of World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA. Once again, I want to thank you for joining us. Please remember, Hindus don't have to be apologetic for anything. We don't have to apologize on our beliefs. Hindus have a right to their beliefs. Hindus stand by those right to believe whether whether we individually believe in certain things or not. Collectively, all Hindus should stand up for rights of our fellow Hindus to have their way, to have a right to worship the way they want to eat the kind of food they want to, and to believe in multiple representations of God or a single representation of God. We are in an era where we have now survived 1,000 years of invasions, and we have emerged out of that. Hindus do not have to apologize for anything of their when it comes to their practices and when it comes to their beliefs. With that, thank you and namaste.